Howdy all, it's episode 213 of the Lookout Sir Warhammer podcast. My name's Dan, and as always, it is my delight to introduce you to my co-host extraordinaire, collaborator, creative genius, and all-round special human being, Phil. How you doing, mate? How's life?
I'm very good, doing well, thank you. Busy painting up Nighthaunt for a tournament this weekend.
Ooh, exciting times, mate. Exciting times. Are you excited to be returning to the mothership? You haven't been since... Crikey. I think your last outing was the doubles for Age of Sigmar back in February, January time?
Yeah, it was around then, I think.
Oh, no, we did the 40k doubles, didn't we? Of course we did.
Oh, yes, that was the last time. Oh, when was that? Was that, June? No.
Yeah, it was like April time, I want to say.
May.
April sort of time.
Yeah.
So. We did quite well in that event, if I remember, though, Phil. We only got 3 wins, but we managed to do... I think we came 5th overall, didn't we, or something?
Or 8th. It was something like that. It was weirdly well, because we got, lots of votes, and we got a Best Army nomination, I want to say.
Yeah, we did all right on that one. Did all right.
Not too bad, yeah. It's interesting. I've, as part of my moving into the shed, I've uncovered all my trophies and certificates for 40k, and I have a ton of Warhammer World event certificates, to the point where I don't really have enough space for them all on top of my shelving, so I need to find another. And most of them are really old and historical, so it's clearly my Krieg did well back then. Less so than my newer stuff.
Mate, that's great though, man. And I think that's the thing. Maybe what you should do is take them outside of their cardboard sleeving and just have the piece of paper that they put them in.
I think that's...
And then just create a montage, or what's the word? A collage. That's the word I couldn't find.
Yeah, I might have to do something like that, I think, or just mount them somewhere else. Basically, the landscape ones are fine, but the portrait ones are too big because of the height of the shelving. But it was a nice trip down memory lane, reliving the events of, the Battle of Conor, which was their special 8th edition themed one that they did and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, no, I do regret getting rid of some of the older things from the past, but most of them I just came to a point where I was like, it just gets a bit crazy. The only ones I've kept hold of are the ones that I mentioned before, the Night of the Inner Circle, the first place at a GT thing, and then my first place in a doubles tournament with Richie. Those are the 3 that I've kept. Although I do still have my 3rd place from the recent 40k GT and my favourite player award from that same event as well. Someday I need to put a beverage in it and enjoy a drink out of it.
That's true.
On account of the fact that the favourite player one is just an actual physical glass, not some kind of
resin tanker.
Yeah, that will kill me. Anyway, Phil, what are we talking about? Episode 213, brother.
We are mostly talking about the Horus Heresy, but we have a little ramble about, what we're up to just beforehand, but mostly talking about what on earth has happened with Heresy and why has it gone so terribly wrong for Games Workshop, the big losers.
That is the broad consensus. And yeah, thank you so much for checking out the show. Obviously, if you'd like to support us in any way possible, it means the world to us if you're kind enough to, like and subscribe on places where you can do so. 5-star reviews are massively valuable. This week's 5-star review, we're going to be talking about dear old Bart, the individual with the interesting name that I'm now looking for frantically because I've seemingly lost it.
Skiprot.
Do you remember what it was?
Skiprot,
that was it. Yeah, there it is. Snickrot, or Bart, who gave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts of Great Britain. Thanks very much for that. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show, and if you'd like to appear there, just give us a 5-star review wherever you can, and we'll find you and stick you up on the show and say nice things about you. It means the world, so please consider doing that. Additionally, as Patreon, obviously a lot of the reason why we're able to continue doing this is because of the support of our incredible patrons. We appreciate times is hard. It ain't easy, obviously, to support creators at the moment, but at the end of the day, it means the world to us that those of you who do. And if you'd like to be amongst them, simply check out the links and go look at Patreon and see what is there. And yeah, maybe chuck us a couple of quid. Or don't. That's also fine. And then merchandise, Rev Level, great little company, does really cool merch. They do our merch. Check them out. Give them a go. Maybe buy some Lookout Sir stuff. That would be awesome. Anything else, Phil, or should we just get on with it?
No, you've said it all and covered it splendidly, so we can just move on.
All right, brilliant. Transitional noise. All right, in this bit of the podcast, we're going to talk about various things, most notably probably Horus Heresy. We may even talk about Space Wolves at some point if we have a chance. Me and Phil kind of had a lengthy conversation about Age of Sigmar before we actually hit record. It's one of those things, isn't it, Phil, where we're having one of these conversations and I think to myself, I probably should get in the habit of just hitting record the minute you and I sit down and start one of these calls because, a lot of good stuff hits the cutting room floor, so they say.
That is true. That is true for sure.
That's it, mate. That's it. But yeah, Phil's going to be up at Warhammer Worlds this weekend playing some Age of Sigmar. He's been painting furiously. New shed, new man. He's been absolutely smashing it, which is a marvel to see. Anything worth mentioning on that front, my friend?
No, it's going well. Oh, the new terrain piece for Soulblight Gravelords and Nighthorn is terribly detailed. To the point where it's a pain and a nightmare to actually paint up because there's just so much stuff on it.
Yeah, what you're supposed to do, mate, is just, spray it black, put a bit of a Xenofold on it, do a quick, slap chop dry brush and stick some oils over the top of it.
Well,
or whatever it is.
I mean, I have sort of been doing. I mean, I haven't used oils. I've just used good old Nullen oil and Agrax, the good old technique. But it's still just painting out the individual details of this is wood, so all these branches I've got to paint these, and then this is metal. The roof's a separate color. There's all these skeletons everywhere. In fact, I actually made my life slightly easier because basically for my Nighthorn, I don't like the sculpted rose detail on any of the miniatures, which is mostly a basing detail. So I have consciously removed them from all of my models. And the terrain piece has it on one half. So on one of the pieces, I've done it as the Soulblight side, so you don't see them. But on the others, I actually preferred the stone texture of the Nighthorn side, and I, with a scalpel, have removed all of the vines on that side, which actually took a bit of time, but actually probably saved me way more time from painting, basically.
There you go. Well, I look forward to seeing them when they're done, mate. I'm sure they'll be beauteous. And obviously good luck this weekend. It's a weird event, isn't it? Because they're basically doing like a weird trial where they're doing 2 events in a one. So it's like a Saturday and a Sunday. And then some people are going to play 6 games, but a lot of people are just going to turn up on the Saturday and
or the Sunday,
presumably, or the Sunday, yeah. So an interesting way of approaching it.
An interesting format, yeah. So it's 3 games each day. You can do both days or one of the days. So there'd be a mixture. Potentially, I assume most people just do both days, but there might be local people that just want to do one for whatever reason. And then it's Scourge of Goran themed. So they're encouraging you to take the Scourge of Goran specific battle profiles, the data sheets. So I've been painting up Kurdos because he's one of them. The Coach, which is the other Nighthorn one, I would love to take, but it's such a big mini, I could not physically build and paint it in time. But it'd be fun to play Kurdos because he's quite good.
Yeah, man. It looks great, though. I mean, obviously, it's not quite finished yet, but what you've shown me of the work in progress looks pretty awesome. And, it's cool. I think there's the thing with Sigmar. Sigmar doesn't sort of attract the big audiences, the big player counts that Warhammer 40,000 does. So it makes sense that GW Warhammer World experiment with different kind of styles of event to try and sort of, satiate the AOS crowd while, offering a degree of flexibility, I guess. Because, it feels like with 40K, they can consistently sell out and get people going in abundance to these events with minimal effort. Whereas like most of the AOS events, either locally or specifically in Warhammer World, it feels like you can pretty much wait till like the week before and still find your way in.
Quite
likely. Although the doubles, I think, the October doubles, I think, has sold out. But again, I think tickets frequently arrive back on sale as obviously people are unable to attend, etc. Especially at the moment. Stuff's expensive. I was actually looking. I was only reminded the other day because I had to pay Richie his money for the ticket that the doubles ticket was £100. I was like, flipping heck. That's a spicy meatball.
I know. It used to be 80 at one point, but I think it moved up to like 90 a few months ago, or at least earlier this year. So I think the last team event we were at doubles event was a 90 quid. So yeah, I mean, 50 quid a person's not too bad actually, and is probably comparable to the other events. Although I think they used to be around 40, 45 per person. So maybe it has gone up slightly.
I think that's about right. Absolutely. I mean, I just bought tickets to go see the Deftones in concert, and I think that was about the same price per person as this Age of Sigmar's double weekend. But they're not putting on lunch, are they? That's the point of the difference. And
that is true.
And they don't give you admission into the Warhammer World exhibition, so more for them.
Exactly. You're missing out.
Absolutely. So anyway, so that's that. Good luck with that this weekend. Looking forward to hearing about that in the next one. Assuming you come back with various laurels and all sorts of accolades that you can share with us. I'm not going back to Warhammer World now till that said doubles thing. I'm busy doing other stuff this weekend, so excited to be doing all of that. But eager to see how you all get on. So it's yourself, Richie, Timothy. Timothy's going.
Yeah, Tim's going. Yeah, with his Maggot King of Nurgle. No, that's it. But we're going to hang out with Sean, our buddy from the
North.
Oh
yes, of course.
On
the North.
The North, as in Nottingham. On the Friday. So we can get practice gaming with him in the afternoon. So that'll be good.
Sean was very kind. Apparently in Warhammer World, they decided to sell the event-exclusive Skaven Stormlord or Swarmlord, or not Stormlord, what's it called? Clawlord! That's the word I couldn't find. So I now am the proud owner of a very expensive Clawlord. It amazed me because so first of all, this is something that probably people who know things could talk about. This was one of those kits where they use that weird type of like plastic, like when you got
you're thinking of like the Gundam style kits,
yes,
where they've got the very thin connection points.
Yes, correct. Yeah, so it was one of those again. So this one was like the Terminator Librarian.
From the hero set.
That's the word.
That they did.
Yes. Yeah. So and it was basically 3 components and a base. 4 simple bits, and it went together beautifully, to its credit. I mean, it was really nice and easy to put together, and it's quite a nice detailed mini. But 4 bits. Part of me was a little bit kind of like, oh, is that all I get for, I think this thing was like 25 quid. I was like, is that all I get for 25 quid? 4 flimsy bits of plastic, and then it was like, but at the same time, I sort of love it for it, really, because had it been several pieces, more than, 4, I probably would have just been annoyed with the build. But as it was quite a delight to put together. So, I'm conflicted, Phil. The price sort of felt more than was necessary given the amount of bits, but at the same time, I was quite happy with the overall process and the finished product. So.
Yeah, well, it's odd because it's a Warhammer World exclusive, so it's not really targeted at new people. So it doesn't really need to be an easy build style of system. So you would have thought it would be particularly more aimed at more competent builders that wouldn't mind more bits. I guess it will still be 1 sprue no matter what. Interesting that they use that method. I do wonder if it would be something they use going forwards, because sometimes just clipping, the smaller the contact point, the better, because it's less stuff to clean up.
Well, that was the other benefit of it, for sure. That was
great. Can get into your get clippers in there a bit easier. Yeah.
No, it was cool. I mean, by comparison, I built old Kritok Fellblade, the kind of War Master of the Skaven, at the same time. So I built this guy, and then I built Kritok. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce his name. It's spelled Krittok. So I'm going with, maybe it's Crit-Tok, whatever it is. And that kit is a delight in the sense that it's got so many beautiful details and so many really lovely flourishes. But yeah, lots of bits and goes together in a really charming way, which was nice. But the two were quite diametrically opposed in their build complexity, I suppose, but whatever. It was
that's fair enough. I did something a bit of a what's the word, finesse move. Spirit hosts are renowned as being like one of the worst kits to build because they're very fiddly. And today, in a few hours, not only did I build them, I did it without the instructions, even though I had them on one side. But I also completely converted it. So I took off all the daggers, so we just had hand weapons, their hands. And then I repositioned them all, so I swapped them around. Because basically, again, as part of my Nighthawk army, I want every single model to look different, and I don't like duplicates. So I didn't want to just build them as is. So I was like, I'll take this and I'll make it look completely different. And it actually was quite straightforward. I just used plentiful amounts of super glue.
Well, fair enough. As long as no one drops a laptop on them, you'll be fine.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Well, I'm not going to be there, mate, so you should be...
I didn't want to say that. But
I know. That is true. I accept my my failings. Cool. Yeah. No, that's all of that. So we're going to talk about Horus Heresy. Essentially, is the thing we wanted to talk about. Now, neither me or Phil at this stage are necessarily going to be Horus Heresy players this edition. It's not because necessarily we've been overly concerned about some of the law changes, although I think that has had an impact on the overall perception of things. I think it's just more the whole situation kind of left me personally a bit cold, and I've never been that massively invested in playing Horus Heresy. I've always looked at it as an aspirational system. It was one of those ones where it's like, one day when I'm a bigger boy, I will get around to playing Horus Heresy like a proper human being. Rather than just continuing to play 40k, AOS, Blood Bowl, etc., etc. But yeah, no, Horus Heresy has been marred in some level of rumoured controversy, it's fair to say. People have got opinions, people are saying things, and, you know, we wouldn't be talking voices on the internet if we didn't weigh in and offer our perspective on the whole thing. But Phil, what is the general situation with Heresy as it's understood via the rumour mill at this point in time?
So I think a few things kicked off. Obviously, there's the fact that there was a whole new edition and it was like a reset. So we're getting new books, new stats. You've got to buy the Liber books all over again, bearing in mind that the only ones, you know, came out 3 years ago. But for people like me, I picked up the Horus Heresy book last year with the intention of getting into it. And then it's like, oh, cool. So that lasted 8 months before it was null and void. Great one, Games Workshop. But, you know, that is the way it is now. And, you know, potentially that will be the same thing going forwards, that maybe they'll do a new edition in 3 years' time. That's just something to be aware of.
They definitely will, mate. And I think there's the thing. I think, you know, it's creating an interesting kind of piece of consumer habit, which is, you know, at least for those who are maybe informed enough, it's kind of like you either kind of get in at the ground level and start from day one, and then in doing so get seemingly the most bang for your buck, or you accept the fact that you're buying it later on into its life cycle and that you're effectively in a situation of diminishing returns. We did that with Age of Sigmar. We joined Age of Sigmar a year and a half into third edition, so we kind of went into it eyes wide open, thinking that, or knowing that a new edition was likely to drop in a year and a half's time, but it didn't necessarily affect our overall enjoyment of it. And I think the way they managed the transition into AOS 4, though not perfect, was, you know, okay for us, because none of us lost out. It wasn't like I had collected Beastmen and you had done Bone Splitters and Richie had collected all the Stormcasts that had all been discontinued.
I had only lost out on the fact that my army of 2,000 points comprised of a 500-point Cron Spine that then went to a free spell. So I was therefore missing 500 points to my army, which I'm only now this as we speak week, painting up those remaining points, basically. But with that addition with that game, we knew a new edition was coming because the 3-year cycle for 40k and Age of Sigmar has been pretty well established by now, unless you're a completely new person coming into the game and didn't know anything. But for a seasoned gamer, we knew about that. For Heresy, though, we did not know that was going to be the case. Obviously, there was a new edition, but maybe I was rather naive to speculate that, like every other game so far that Specialist Games has done, they don't really do new editions. Like if you look at Necromunda, I mean, Blood Bowl did get a reset a handful of years ago. But even then, that wasn't on a 3-year release cycle. Necromunda hasn't really had one, but it has produced sort of new launch boxes, but they never really... Yeah, Necromunda is a bit of a mess in terms of where the rules lie. But they haven't actually done a hard reset and said, all your models are invalid.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with like the Specialist Games department and what they've done, right? They've established a pattern, and also Heresy itself has a pattern, right? Which is the Heresy in its early first iteration, I want to say came out in like 2010, 2011 via the big black book. I feel like it was... early 6th edition or maybe even late 5th edition that we started seeing black books from Forge World for the Horus Heresy. And obviously those black books alongside other Imperial Armory books that Forge World supported and released for the main 40k game system kind of created this opportunity for people to play Horus Heresy within those game systems. And then they subsequently did the red books, which kind of cemented all of that, especially when 40k migrated over to 8th edition, and 8th edition's gameplay wasn't really compatible with what had been established historically. And then obviously 3 years ago, they went, oh, here's 2nd edition. And it was quite iterative. Yes, they changed a few unit rules, but it felt about time to kind of tear it away and make it into its own standalone system, rather than, what it was previously, which was kind of like a supplement for a game that, even though they had taken steps to kind of support it through a red book version of the rules, wasn't really used. So anyway, my point is that I think it's completely reasonable to accept that established Heresy players were not expecting their game to be drastically changed 3 years after having been asked to and willingly purchased multiple miniatures, books, etc., etc. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. So that was obviously shock number one, which I think most people were sort of on board with. I think in terms of the rules, I think it's a bit hit and miss. Some people have liked them from what they read either before leaks or just from the Warcom previews. Things like the addition of cool and willpower and stuff I was a bit iffy about, although then saying that I then played a game of Necromunda where I could see those actually take effect and how actually they differ from leadership, and in that game it works really well, and now I've sort of got my head around it a bit more, so I can see that also working in Heresy and I don't mind it. And I think, obviously, they've gone for a much more sort of narrative, crunchy rule set. And, I'm a bit like, that's all well and good. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think the real issue came when more leaks came out, which was what were in the Libers, which are the army books, and then loads of stuff was missing. Games Workshop had already said at that point there'll be a Legacies PDF where other stuff will exist, but I think for a lot of people it was probably a bit of a shock in terms of just how much stuff was in there.
Or was
especially,
it, as it were?
Yes, and there was no real explanation from Games Workshop about why. I think they've since said, because they did address it in a Warcom article, that basically stuff that's in a box that you can buy for a unit is in the Libers. And then stuff that was historically available to buy that isn't anymore, or is in maybe resin and maybe destined to be redone in plastic, tended to be in the Legacies PDF. But you had sort of some odd examples where, for example, Tartarus Terminators, which is a plastic kit you can buy from Games Workshop, that contain power fists, did not contain power fists in the Liber books. And I think they've since addressed that by adding them in, at least, I think, to the Legacies PDF. I think the assumption there is they will be redone in plastic at some point, and they probably won't all have access to power fists. Maybe there'll be slightly different weapon options in the newer plastic kit down the line. That would be at least my assumption. But that was a big hoo-ha where everyone was like, a load of my units aren't valid, because this was prior to the PDF coming out. And loads of people saying the flavour of my army has changed because, you know, the certain Legion specific rules aren't there, or they're not as good as they used to be.
Yeah, no, I've heard that some of the Legions have really not had a good time on that front, and I've heard that, you know, from people we know who have played a lot of Heresy, that the rule set is a bit bulky in the way that it's implemented. I heard as well that they've reduced the length of game to 4 turns, and I think obviously that's an attempt to try and make it a more manageable play experience, because evidently they've added in all these additional complexities. But then obviously the game, I imagine, will probably be played with even bigger armies than it was in prior editions, because typically that is the GW model, make the units more expensive to buy with physical, actual, real-world money, but make them cheaper to put on the battlefield in-game, so as you have to buy more of them in order to fulfill your 3,000-point requirement, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the decisions they've made with the gameplay and the rules kind of feel like a bit unnecessary, especially when you consider that the system of old kind of accounted for a lot of the complexity that you would kind of want from simulated warfare already. Like, the rules kind of gave you enough of a depth of expression around those things that it didn't necessarily feel necessary that you added in a bunch of extra stats. But as you say, those things in isolation, if done with the right kind of intentions, would probably have been relatively well received. But I think there's the thing, isn't it? It's the chain of events, right? First of all, so to be completely transparent, I got off at the start. Like, literally the minute they told me that they're releasing new Libras and I have to rebuy everything literature-wise. I'm someone who has, as I say, aspired to play Heresy. I own a Heresy army in sprue form that I haven't found the time to prioritize building. But I have all the miniatures to run a pretty comprehensive Dark Angel army. I've built a considerable amount of them, although not enough to be able to field the army just yet. And as soon as they were like, oh, you have to rebuy every book and rebuy everything, I was just like, I'm out. Like, that's enough for me. Like, that genuinely was, I've got enough. But again, for me, I've got so many different game systems that I'm prioritizing. I didn't play Heresy very much at all over the last 3 years. And seemingly that was a better system. And or it felt like a better system from the outside looking in. And I dodged that for 3 years, and it didn't feel like a massive loss. So I just felt like, you know what? I have to accept the fact that life is limited and I only have so much time to do hobby and games. I just can't do this one. This one has to just pass me by. So they gave me a viable excuse. But anyway, so I got off at that point. But then I think, yeah, the other people probably, when they started seeing the rules, were a bit like, ooh, this looks a bit weird. And then obviously the whole kind of like, oh, we've just completely mucked up what your armies are and how they function is also a bit weird. So I completely understand why there is negativity towards this release and why it is that Games Workshop kind of dropped the ball. It's been really interesting kind of watching the online discourse around it, because I actually think one of the things that's quite funny about it, though, is that although people like maybe ourselves who are doing this now and other kind of like variety content creators, streamers are talking about this because it's, it's the kind of juicy, gossipy content that drives clicks and gets people, engaged because there's a bit of drama to it. I feel like most of the problem with Heresy, this edition of Heresy, is it's just been met with complete apathy by most people. Like, Warhammer 40,000 players don't care. Like, no one is talking about it unless other than the sort of the niche that really care about it or did care about it. And on the whole, I don't know, it's really interesting that, such a prolific, important setting featuring the poster boys of Warhammer 40,000, the Space Marines, is in a scenario where, from the outside looking in, it seems like it's really, really failed to sell. Like, it doesn't seem like very many people are playing or are interested in this edition of Heresy. And I think that's been reflected in what a lot of people are rumoring is happening in the retail space, right? Like, lots of people are basically tearing website inventories apart, going, look, this store's got 100,000 copies still. Sort of creating all this sort of hubbub. Who knows how many they've got, but like, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, the general kind of community discourse around it at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There wasn't as much fanfare about this launch, even from Games Workshop, than second edition. When second edition came out, obviously there was a big animated trailer. Yes, we had an animated trailer this time around, but I don't think it was as impressive. And I think
it had some cool elements. The talky bits between Valdor and
Malcador, that was great.
Malcador were great. Yeah, that was good. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was good. But I think the trailer was as exciting as the previous one, and I think maybe it's just also the excitement of the a Heresy trailer for the first time, whereas 40K's been pretty consistent about it, and same with Age of Sigmar. So maybe it's that hit of the first time you do something, it's never going to quite be the same. But they also didn't really do like a sort of launch event for it, whereas in second edition they had loads of content creators come up, and they did like a Horus Heresy like day as well. So Games Workshop did more about it, and maybe that's why they didn't.
Widely panned.
Yeah, I think it was panned. Personally, it felt like it was because they got 40K content creators rather than Heresy content creators. And it just felt like, oh, cool, you're just jumping on the bandwagon. You do literally maybe one or two videos about it, and then eventually you just go back to your 40K content. And most of them did that. I mean, shout out to SM Bat Reports. They had always done quite a bit of Heresy alongside 40K, and in second edition completely pivoted to just doing Heresy content and not 40K, because they were like, this is our niche now, because they obviously really enjoyed it, and they're still sticking with it. So,
Did you see all that community controversy leverage towards Pardo as a result of that?
Oh, the F Pardo stuff. So from what I gather, the leaks that came out had a sort of watermark of F Pardo, because I think he had said something like, oh yeah, it's not that bad, to that effect. And then they embraced it, and even now I think sell T-shirts that raise money for charity. Featuring that infamous hashtag on, so good on them for taking it on the chin, basically. But yeah, that seemed a bit mad, because obviously either they didn't know what was going on either, or they couldn't say because they were under NDA. I suspect they just probably didn't know what was in the Legacy PDF, so they just were none the wiser.
It felt like GW definitely had their NDA'd influencers take a bit of a hit for some of that stuff as well. Like, I think the fact is that if you can be in a situation where someone like Pardo, who I don't really know personally, although I know you do, Phil, because you've attended multiple retreats, and I don't know if you would consider yourself a friend of his, but you're definitely acquainted, right? He'd say hello to you if he saw you. But yeah, my thing is like, yeah, just I feel like I felt really bad for him during that whole situation, because at the end of the day, like, no one deserves to like receive that level of that level of pressure and aggression and general kind of, I mean, again, like, sure, like, I could probably see how you would think that was funny or that you think it was appropriate, but I really don't think that is what you should be doing to people, especially in this community of all things. Like, I think we should all do better at trying to kind of elevate each other and trying to kind of, be a little bit more measured in how we manage these things.
Yeah, especially when it's to do with personal people. Like, obviously, we criticise Games Workshop quite a lot, but we do that in a kind of the faceless company, not individually picking on, designers or whoever works at Games Workshop. So this person has ruined my life. I believe the general rumour around I don't know if this is how it started, but what part of the Pardo thing was is people believed he joined a Discord and then dobbed in the leaker to Games Workshop, which he at all didn't do. That was just like a complete rumour, basically. Because when the whole hashtag was coming about, he mentioned it in the No Retreat chat group because people were asking him like, "What's going on?" And I believe that was what was the case. I think Games Workshop probably could have handled the whole Legacies PDF better. I think it was a combination of information came out before Games Workshop got to announce it, because it got leaked.
I don't think Games Workshop had any intention of announcing that, though. I don't
think either. But I think if the PDF had come out prior to the Libers coming out, or simultaneously, then people wouldn't have lost their minds in quite the same way that they did. But I also think the messaging from Games Workshop beforehand basically was a rod for their own back and something they couldn't live up to, because they sort of made promises with your army will be perfectly fine. There'll be only a few tweaks to make to your army, and that obviously isn't the case. Even I think when you factor into the Legacies PDF, that's still not the case. And I think it's worth mentioning that the Legacies PDF is much different than 40k Legends sort of play. The PDF Legacies is completely sort of match play legal. You can play it in tournaments, you can play it in events, unless tournament organisers specifically don't want to. But it's like supported and balanced, whereas 40k and Age of Sigmar Legends this is where stuff goes to die. We'll give it points once, but we won't look at it again, sort of thing. And then eventually, probably after an edition or two, it will just not be on there anymore. So I think the Specialist Games team's done quite a good job at trying to include everything that has historically been available for Heresy.
Yeah, but I think I'm in the conspiracy theory camp of they scrambled to do it because of the negative reaction. I don't think they intended to do it.
Who knows for sure? I think,
who knows?
They definitely were intending to do it, but would it have had as much in there as it did is the question, and it might have been a much smaller list. I would have liked to have thought it would have been pretty comprehensive, because the previous edition one was as well.
Well, it just sort of struck me that they basically scrambled out a Warhammer Community article basically saying it, and then they just sort of shadow dropped it earlier this week. It didn't even really have any fanfare around it when it came out. They just was like, it's there now. And it was like, oh, okay. And again, typically, I feel like if they were planning this stuff, they typically, have more kind of things to say about it or more comprehensive insights on it. And again, I think at the end of the day, they couldn't ignore the negativity that was being pushed towards it. But I think, again, the thing is, I think this is the thing where GW, the company, really kind of loses itself in its own madness sometimes, where it's like, we have Warhammer 40,000 and every 3 years we change everything and our consumers, lap it up like, lovely nutritious gruel, and we serve it to them every 3 years and they love it. But the thing is Warhammer 40,000 is a game with a churn. There are thousands of new young people going into GW stores within the span of a 3-year life cycle of an edition, coming into the world, coming into the game, and being basically recruited and becoming Warhammer 40,000 fans, either through the video games or the other, literature, whatever it is. And they're all kind of just getting involved in it because there's a churn. AOS, I think they've managed it a bit better in terms of how they've managed that churn, but it has the same effect. Whereas Heresy is it's a different product for a different audience with a different mentality. And I think that's the problem, where I don't think GW spent any time thinking about their user base and thinking about how important their kind of legacy players are for Heresy versus other systems. People legacy 40k players, people who still enjoy playing like 5th editions, whatever old edition 40k, they're kind of a niche towards themselves and they like to stay within their little space. But the reality is for every 40k player that you lose because they're annoyed about the latest edition or whatever, you probably gain 2 more or whatever because of the churn. But this isn't what Heresy enjoys. Heresy is so boutique, so specialist, so like revered within the kind of ecosystem of GW that it does need to be treated differently. And I think that's why Games Workshop dropped the ball. Yeah,
it is a different sort of mindset, I think, because most people take pride in their armies because the overall bar for a Heresy army is very high. Historically, they used to cost a lot of money because it was all resin originally. There's a real push and emphasis for sort of narrative gaming as well as sort of converting and just doing a high level of like your paint jobs. And I think most people aspire to a Heresy army, try to achieve a very well painted army. They're not just spraying it black and calling it a day, unlike what you would often get in a 40k tournament, for example. And I think the problem has been where that is the mindset, and I suspect even the design team behind the game know that that's their audience. But let's say Evil Games Workshop Corp have come and said, cool, you want this to be a mainstream game. These are my stipulations. Like, cool, you can have it all in plastic. We can promote it as the third pillar of the triangle of the three main games, which is now 4 because we've got Old World as well. But the sacrifice is you've got to have this churn. You've got to have a 3-year release cycle because that's what all the others do. And I think that's where you've got a bit of a clash between either the old guard of Games Workshop, but also the old guard of the gamers, right? And it's like, I would actually say that most of Heresy and Old World gamers are people that have retreated away from 40k because of things like the churn. That's probably not the only reason. Obviously, people love the setting as well. But I think that to me, I always liked the idea of Heresy because it wasn't on a 3-year release cycle. I know I can buy that book that I bought last year and it was going to stick around for like 5 years, 6 years or something is what I was expecting, and that I can dip into that game when I'm ready. Or, I did a bunch of games with Tim one time, and I specifically built my Thunder Warriors to be a 40k and Heresy army. So I've still been looking at this edition as, it will be maybe something I will play at some point, but not right away. I wanted to at least wait until I could see what they did with the Custodes, which they've released a free PDF for. And some of the units in there have gone, but they were the units that didn't actually exist in terms of models. It was like this elite bodyguard unit for your Tribune and Valdor that could take these cool swords. And they were like individual, well, I think they're maybe in units of 3, but they were like this cool elite unit of Custodes. That's not in there. So, and I don't even think it's in the Legacies PDF, because I think I looked and there was no Custodes in there. So that's interesting that if you're a Custodes and Sisters player, you've sort of probably taken a hit because you probably would have converted up stuff for those units. But I suspect that they will come back in the announced Talons of the Emperor book, Liber, that is coming out at some point that they've talked about. But again, they haven't said. So if you're a Custodes player and you're like, oh, where's my stuff? Who knows? It's not in the not in the Legacies PDF.
I doubt it, because I think like what's happened is that because the majority of Heresy players are Marine players, I think they've obviously dealt with that problem. And then, the more kind of niche Custodes, Mechanicum, players, Solar Auxilia players, Militia players, whatever it is, like they're probably just like, we're just doing it for the Marine guys just to try and...
Because they shouted the loudest.
It's just a bit of crisis management. It's like, okay, how do we do it? It's like what they did with the Death Watch. The Death Watch... Anyone who is collecting a Death Watch army for 40k right now, doing those kill teams the way they're described in that flipping index, is a lunatic, because it's like it is gone. Like, I don't understand how people could be kind of like duped like
it'll be interesting because obviously Games Workshop does backtrack to a certain extent. They backtrack to do an index for Deathwatch, but will they backtrack enough to give them a Codex Next Edition, or are they just going to be Imperial agents? Obviously, they've got the new kill team coming as well.
Yeah, they'll be the kill team, and that's it. There'll be a unit, and that'll be the end of it. And if you want to, if you want to take an army of them, paint them that color scheme, but they're just Space Marines. That's what they're going to be. That's how it's going to go.
So speaking of crisis management, did you see Games Workshop's announcement where they were like, "We've heard you, we've listened, and now we're going to talk about Black Library in Ukraine"? Did you see that post?
No. What was this?
So it was the time the Legacies PDF hoo-ha was going on. Games Workshop put out an official announcement on their social media, and they said, we've heard you talking, we're listening, and we're responding to your feedback in regards to a rumor about the fact that Black Library had dropped a Ukraine publisher, and I think people were speculating it was because they're in cahoots with Russia or something, and they were saying, and we're going to explain it by not explaining it, but saying they're open to work with a different Ukraine publisher. And everyone was like, so you're willingly addressing what I assuming was a fringe conspiracy theory on Twitter or somewhere? Because I hadn't seen anything other than
I hadn't even heard about the announcement. That's crazy. Okay.
Games Workshop. But people's point was you were addressing this, but not doing a public post about the Legacies PDF debacle. And that was such like a weird, oddity to see them respond to something that wasn't even really being talked about by mainstream hobbyists, I would say.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's the difference that you see is that, because a situation that affects their ability to sell books into a particular market has a more detrimental effect to their share price, which is ultimately all they care about, rather than nerds being upset on the internet, which they always are. So you just have thing, isn't it, where it's like this thing could impact the money, deal with that. This thing is par for the course, and our shareholders don't really know what's going on with these games. They just see the numbers going up, and that's all they care about. So yeah, this is a more real world, tangible thing, even if it is based on nothing or rumors or whatever. Again, I have no idea what's going on with that. But my point is that it has more of a meaningful impact on the money, which is why I'm not surprised GW have to put out comms to address it, because that's to shore up its stock prices as opposed to the legacy PDF.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Honestly, mate, once you're a big shareholding company, all of your public communications are all centered around controlling that number. That's the whole game. You've got to keep the line must keep going up. It must not come down.
Speaking of which, they announced their shareholder financials quite recently, and it does seem like it's always going up.
Exactly.
I can't remember what really. There wasn't a huge amount of really interesting takeaways on it. I think they announced that yes, Old World is the fourth sort of pillar of their game, so it is like a mainstream one now. Does that mean?
Yep.
Basically, they've got 4 main game systems now. But a 3-year release cycle. So I guess, is there going to be a case where everything will go to a 4-year release cycle, or will it be, because I think Heresy and the Old World, did they both come out at the same year? It was Legions Imperialis came out, then it was shortly followed by the Old World, and that came out, Old World came out same year. Age of Sigmar came out, but obviously Old World came out in like January, and Age of Sigmar came out in like June, July time. So yeah, they could just do that again potentially. I would personally love it if they went to a 4-year or even 5-year cycle with a off year for specialist games like your Necromunda, your Blood Bowls, your Legions Imperialis or whatever.
I'd just like to see with Old World them I'd like to see with Old World them just do a bit of an iterative thing so you can keep using the stuff you have with the rules you currently have. I mean, and this is the thing as well, they have to tread carefully with Old World because everything in its legacy, everything in its old. So imagine they come along and go, oh, we decided here's a new Tomb King army now that you bought loads of the original Tomb King kit. Now here's the new ones. All that old stuff is irrelevant now. You can't use it anymore. It'd be like, oh, wow, cheers, thanks for that.
That is the 40k mindset. I really hope they don't do that. And this is what I've always loved, what I've wanted to happen in 40k. They go, here's the same thing as before, but it's just a nicer kit. So it's cool. Here's new Tomb Kings. You can run them as your old Tomb Kings because they're the same unit with the same name. They haven't done what they've done historically, at least more recent years of 40k, where it's like, it's the same thing, but we've given it a different name for copyright reasons, I guess, or to potentially, to be fair, I think with Age of Sigmar for things like Barrow Guard, for example, I think they did that specifically probably to differentiate it from fantasy as a sort of new unit, and also to probably show up their IP as a sort of more unique copyrightable term. So I think there's a few reasons why they do it, but when they just give you something new and then discontinue something old, and there's no sort of like for like representation, I don't like that, and that would kill off, I think, Old World. I don't think they could possibly do it because it is so much shored up by people with old armies. Like, I imagine that's the majority of the player base. Maybe in 20 years' time, if they're on Old World, 5th edition, maybe everything's in new shiny plastic, and there's, Kislev as well as Cafe and a bunch of other, what was it, like Vampire Coast or something, who knows what they might do by then. And maybe at that point it's like, cool, yeah, we can completely redo dwarves and high elves and Empire, right, and give you new units and discontinue old ones. But I really hope they don't. I was like, there's no real I mean, obviously there is for them to monetarily make you buy new stuff. But personally, I'm like, but you can do both, because those people will want those new things. Some people will want an upscaled Primaris-ified army in new shiny plastic, as well as having their old legacy army that they will keep on the cabinet or maybe play once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? I'm highly likely to buy the new Tomb King sculpts for the Tomb Kings and Liches because they look cool, and I have a Tomb King army,
they're good.
And it's like, cool, I'll get them and add them to the
I saw what was really annoying is, so this week, I think it's actually the day this podcast comes out, because it comes out on Friday now.
It comes out theoretically.
In theory, but Bretonnian Meta Order's happening on Saturday. And I'm like, I have a couple of Bretonnian models. I really like the old sculpts. And it's like, ooh, do I want this? It's like, I don't really want a Bretonnian army. I love the idea of the Arcane Journal Peasant Army, though, as a kind of cool, fun thing. So I bought that Arcane Journal when it first dropped because it looked really fun. And it's a sort of, as you say, like with Heresy, it's a wish fulfillment thing. It's like you want to be able to do it. But basically, it's like, no, you have 1 week to decide if you want to drop probably 100 odd quid on, a couple of units, or more if you wanted all of them. Because I don't actually know how many that they are, but they're all metal, so they're going to be quite expensive. And that's the one thing that does annoy me with the made to order stuff, is you don't really get any time to actually order it, put your order in. It's not going to be made for like another 100 days, but you've got a 1 week window in which to put your order in. And same thing for the Citadel Woods. I was meaning to pre-order the made-to-order Woods, and then I forgot. And then I was like a week too late, I think. And it's like, oh, God, that's annoying, because I'd have quite liked just one of them.
Well, I bought 4 of them.
Do you know, in the back of my mind, I was like, chances are Dan would have bought tons, and at one point he'd be like, I don't want it. Just give me some money for it and have it.
That's basically probably the way.
And I will be there to collect.
Yeah, it's quite likely that will be my reality. But I just was like, yeah, screw it. I'll buy 4 of them because
I mean, they're gorgeous. I don't know why they're not just on permanent. Like,
yeah, I have no idea why that isn't the case. It's pretty baffling, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, the made to order stuff is a bit of a mad one. The only time other than the terrain kits, so I bought 4 of the woods, and then I bought some of the Sigmar temples because they're super cool. So I got my hands on those, which I'm really happy about. But yeah, other than the terrain stuff, I don't really normally do the made to order stuff. Although I was very tempted by the Steel Legion stuff they did way back then. That was super cool. Fun. Oh, and I did buy a couple of the made to order old Firstborn Chaplain sculpts as well, because those were super lovely.
Yeah, nice. I got the Bastion and Imperial landing pads when they did.
Oh yeah, nice. Good.
Because I wanted some classic 40k terrain.
Yeah, I already had a couple Bastions, so I was like, I'm all right on that one. I don't have the landing pad. I kind of feel like I've missed a trick by not owning the landing pad. But I've got a few Aegis defense lines. I've got a couple of the Wall Martyr or whatever they're called.
Wall of Martyrs. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a few of those with the bunkers and bits and pieces. So yeah, I can still rock the old edition stuff. I mean, that's the thing, like something that a bit of a sort of personal project that I really do need to focus on over the foreseeable is just doing a little bit more terrain work, really. So yeah, I hope to before the year is over, I hope to kind of make some progress building some terrain kits, specifically for AOS initially. I want to get that one solved, and then I'll work back to like, you know, a 40k kit, and then an old world setup, and then yeah, that'll probably be what I need, and then maybe old Hammer style Warhammer 40,000 stuff with the bastions and what have you. Although it would be amazing to finally do the Realm of Battles Cities of Death tiles and do an actual full Cities of Death board. That would be pretty mad, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, so I've got those tiles. So when I get my gaming table set up or built, that's would be my plan. And I managed to pick up on eBay 2 more Cities of Death tiles, because before I had 4 cities tiles plus the 2 Manufactorum ones.
Oh,
and I was like, I've always wanted 6 cities tiles. So I managed to pick up 2 for a pretty decent price.
Amazing.
So I can swap out the Manufactorum one. Because the problem with the Manufactorum ones is they are just basically buildings that are pretty much the same size as the entire tile.
Yes, that
you can't really go on. You can sort of go around it and stuff. So it feels like they look beautiful, but they're maybe not as practical as just ruins on and stuff. So I like the idea of being able to swap them out if needed.
Yeah, no, I think that's the way to go, mate. I think cool that you've managed to accrue so many of those fancy tiles, though. Should we ever actually do a Lookouts 40k event? Oh, those 4x4 Realm of Battle boards will be a thing of beauty.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's it. Anyway, bringing it back to Heresy. So yeah, basically, long story short, what we were sort of saying is that yeah, a bunch of weird stuff happened. The legacy PDF stuff is kind of weird, and the way they've kind of managed it is also strange. I think as well, and again, I'm not overly bothered necessarily personally by the introduction of Saturnine into the setting, because I'm not that precious about any particular aspect of Warhammer 40,000 lore. But even I can accept the fact that this is pretty dumb. Like, I don't really understand why Games Workshop have complete inability to introduce things into their settings without, like, seemingly doing the dumbest version of it. Like, I don't get it. And I don't understand why they, of all people, you know, the custodians of their intellectual property, seem to have a complete disregard for what it is that their fans so obviously want. It's like, if you're going to spend years creating a world through literature, through game systems, through campaign books, and other kind of supplementary media, and you're basically going to pour all this work into creating a detail-orientated universe with a real emphasis on, you know, the compositions of the armies, the different types of arsenal or war gear that they bring to bear, the types of things they had access to, build the universal maps and create all of these different conflict zones where all these different legions are battling after all these different things, and you have detailed insights on what they have access to. It just seems utterly bananas to me that against the backdrop of that level of detail, you go, oh yeah, and out of the blue, Saturnine. It's like, what? Where has this come from?
Well, here's the thing. So I think it always existed in the background, but there was like one image and like maybe some teasers somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly where, other than that there was a miniature historically in 40k, back in the 80s, right? So, and there was some artwork that existed, I think was for Heresy. I think the interesting thing is, if Heresy was just, myths and legends still, and they didn't do the Black Library novel series, introducing new stuff, I think they could have gotten away with it a lot more, because much like with other units when they were developing Heresy, they can be like, cool, here's a new type of Predator, here's a new pattern of Terminator armor. And it's just in the army books, because that's where all the history is. Obviously, they were doing Black Library books back then as well, but they were still ongoing, so they could write those things in, or they had already written those things in. I think it's just a very odd, jarring thing to do when you go, we have completely finished the novelization of this history, and then we're going to introduce something massively, groundbreakingly new into this setting, and we're going to do it in a way that it wasn't niche, it wasn't hidden. Like, if they had got Saturnine existed and we introduced it as new armor during the Siege of Terror, the vaults were open and this armor came out to defend Terror at the final hour, and that was written into the Black Library books, you'd be like, cool, okay, whether you like it or not in terms of the armor. But or if it was like, this was a niche prototype project and there was only a couple of dozens of suits, and if and it existed predominantly for the salamanders, but if you want to make believe and take it in your army, you can do that. I think that would have been fine as well. But to say, oh, cool, everyone can have it, and it sort of existed everywhere, but it's like, well, you didn't exist for the last 10 years, where you literally laid out pretty much everything that has existed in this fictional history. I think that's the weirdest, like, cognitive dissonance in terms of retconning basically stuff in, and it's really shoehorning it in, and people really struggled with that logic when it was the Corvus armor, the Mark 6 that came out in plastic, and they said, yeah, everyone can take it, because yeah, technically everyone could, but it was historically much more used for Raven Guard than anyone else. But because Games Workshop wants to sell it to everyone, they've got to sort of come up with a way of excusing that everyone should be able to have it en masse. And yeah, personally, I don't like the design of the armor. I think the Dreadnought looks better than the Terminators, but even then, I'd rather have Leviathan Dreadnoughts being the big Dreadnought, and now this is bigger, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the Saturnine Terminator armor goes from being this kind of niche, obscure, very limited resource, even if it were available, to not only being seemingly abundant, available to all, the fact that you're also now got a Dreadnought version of it, which kind of feels mad. It's like, okay, so what's going on there? It's like, oh, it's a Saturnine Dreadnought. Right, okay, sure, fine, okay, whatever. But then, like, the fact that, yeah, they just not only put it everywhere, they also then just went, and where it was most prolific was during the drop site massacre. Istvan. It was everywhere at Istvan. It's like
the most famous, talked about, and probably written battle in the Heresy, yeah. I think also, and they got, oh yeah, and there's a captain version of it as well. And it's like, okay, cool. So who actually had this in the drop site massacre in the stories? Like, no. I think it's the thing. I mean, obviously I've read like, I want to say like 11, 12 of the books. So the first ones, because I'm reading them in order. Obviously it's not mentioned in any of those. And obviously the first couple did actually cover the Job Site Massacre. Like, if it was teased in and talked about in the books, and maybe it is, I don't know, but if it was, I think it would be a bit more understandable. But you're right, yeah, when the theming of, I mean, technically the box set isn't, actually, no, it's themed around Job Site Massacre, because I think there's a little mission in there which is about it. Obviously, the Job Site Massacre is a book that they've launched alongside it as well. I think, if they had gone, this was a niche project, and you could buy it. Yeah, I think here's the thing: if it wasn't in the army box, so it wasn't, because that to me should be generic, that everyone should have. If it wasn't in there, and they just released it as a kit on its own, and it had its own like little special mission, and it talked about like this was like prototype armor or something. I think maybe people would be more on board with it. Maybe, I think because it's in a box set that it's encouraging you to all buy for your army.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work in quite the same way, I think.
And this is the thing as well, though, right? As someone who's obviously started going through the Heresy novel series and listening or reading them, what you'll know is that, like, for the first, like, I feel like it was like the first 20 books of the Horus Heresy series, most of it was them just waxing lyrical about Istvan. Like, most of the early books were kind of like, we'll get to talking about what we're going to talk about, but just let us talk about Istvan again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like that particular setting was explored so extensively throughout that series of books. It's like inserting new stuff into it now is just like insane, but whatever, right? Like, sorry.
It's, I was going to say, I think what because the issue I had is the first few books by Dan are really great. And then the story doesn't really progress beyond them, because what they do is they then have to do a book at least dedicated to pretty much each legion, talking about where they were in the crusade, how they fell or whatever, or where they were when the war broke out. And all of that is basically prior, pretty much leads up to Istvan, and very few books early doors go beyond that. So as someone that's reading it as like as a series, you're like, okay, cool, but what happened after Istvan? And it's like, I think I'm 11 books in, and I don't think they've done anything major post that. There's been, because they just do little story arcs and they go off in their own little directions. But yeah, it still feels like they're either dealing with events up and around, or maybe just after Istvan.
Yeah, that's how they stuck for a while. It took them a long time to get into their groove to actually start progressing the narrative. They just kind of lingered in the Istvan bit. And that's why, as I say, it's so weird that they've just gone, oh, here you go. And again, to me, I completely get why people were not happy about that, because I think at the end of the day, to a lot of these people, like, that story, that world, that, fictional history though it may be, had a great level of significance. Like, because of how seminal the books were, how incredible the early work of, like, Alan Blythe was in terms of developing the Black Books, but also creating the whole kind of ecosystem that was the legions, and, fleshing out all of those kind of, military concepts and things. There's so much really beautiful, incredible work that went into creating that fiction. For you just to come along and go, oh, cool, splat a new piece of stuff on top of it is just a bit like, wow.
What worked really well in the old Black books is basically each one was like a campaign setting. It's like, here we are, and here are the legions that were in that setting, and here are the units that are new to the game that you've never seen before, but were predominantly here and also available in other battles. And it was a great way of introducing new units without, they weren't retconning anything. So if they had done a big black library book, big black book, that was, let's say Saturn, for example, and it was about battle on Saturn, and they had Saturnine armor predominantly in that, and it was a new thing, no one would care, because that was how new units always got introduced. I think the point you're pointing at is you're going back to a battle you have already established what was there, and then inserting new stuff into it. Which is what makes it feel like it doesn't quite work in the same way.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with what they've done and how they've approached it, and why I think people have got their back up to it, because I think it's the three things in concert, right? It's the fact that they've invalidated all your purchases from 3 years ago, noting that was enough for me to get off the train. I was literally like, as soon as they said that, I was like, cool, I don't care, I'm not going to do this game. They've updated the rules in such a way as to make it more complicated and to ultimately neuter, things that you've become accustomed to over the span of these last 3 years, but have also been very true to what has been the case in the past. Because the thing you have to remember about second edition Heresy was effectively all they did was clean up the rules a bit, although they were a bit all over the place in how they were laid out. But they kind of cleaned up the rules and then gave you a reaction system. That was effectively what they did with Heresy 2. And then they added a couple extra wounds to some units. So if it was like a Terminator or an Elite Starler unit, it went from being 1 wound to 2. But literally everything in the original second edition release was all the same kind of stats and rules, just cleaned up from the old game, made new. Yes, they mucked up Dreadnoughts out of the gate, although the community kind of learned how to deal with that. But this is the thing, they've kind of disregarded a lot of that work and kind of changed the flavor and changed a lot of the ways that people's armies have played for a long time now. And then lastly, they just go, oh, cool. And then we're going to just kind of show that we have no concern or no real, desire to kind of preserve the fluff. We're just going to spit on that as well. So it's that thing where you're like, it's just that triumvirate. It's like, cool, you've invalidated everything that was before. You've shown no respect for the fluff that means quite a lot to people, and you're expecting me to buy everything again. It's just like, and it's just, I can absolutely understand why people have landed at a point where they're not happy about it, and then presumably not bought it because, that seems to be the other part of this conversation.
I sort of feel like we've always had that issue, especially in the last 2 editions of 40k and AOS, that basically everyone's had feels bad as the edition drops or just before the edition drops, because it's like, cool, here's a load of units or armies that are being legends or being made redundant from the game, and that always just sucks. And then when you go from a shift of your army used to play this way to now it plays a new way, it's like that's always a hard learning curve, because it sort of feels unfun, because everyone likes how things were. Everyone likes the gimmick of their army. That was potentially one of the reasons why they chose that army, because it had a certain play style. But I do think there's a sort of level of but you get used to it, right? That you'll be like, my army plays this way. We read the rules. Everyone loses their minds because they're like, oh, this is dreadful. My army used to do this or was better than this unit, and now it isn't. But everything has changed. And this is what happened every time they index 40k. Everyone complains that a particular unit is not as good as another opponent's unit that it used to be better stat-wise, or some army-wide rules are different from other armies or how it used to be. But because everything has been turned upside down, you can't make those comparisons anymore. So I can see why people get annoyed in the Heresy regarding that. But I also think that it's the new Doctor Who issue, right? No one likes the change, but then as soon as you're in it, after a year, you're like, hey, yes, this is cool. This is my Doctor, or this is my army again. Like it's just going to play different because it is a completely new system, and that is a pain curve that every player has to go through. But I don't think that is particularly like maybe valid criticism. I think it's just instant criticism that all players have of a new system. And like I said that when I saw some of the stats, where I was like, oh, this looks confusing. And with the leadership one, as soon as I got a game in that used that, I was like, okay, cool, I understand it now. Some of the other mechanics, do look quite complicated, but so I can't judge those or how it plays. But maybe it will play completely different, and for some people they won't like it, and that's valid. And other people will get used to it, and it'll be fine. And maybe it is generally a better edition. Like, it does feel like it's got a lot more flavor and sort of narrative elements to it. But does that work on a giant game where you've got 3,000 points aside? Or would that be better suited for a much smaller sort of, more smaller, intimate game with less models. I don't know is the answer.
Yeah, I think this is the thing, right? And ultimately, it depends what the goal is or what you think the goal is for GW and for your community. I think here's the thing. I'm not, again, an active Horus Heresy player, so I'm just going to speak about this from the perspective of Age of Sigmar. I think 40k is such a monolithic thing, it doesn't really even, require any comparison. It's in a world of its own. But Heresy and AOS are kind of, in a similar kind of, or were in a similar kind of spot. They were the supplementary tournament event or event game that was played alongside 40k. 40k would have 800 players at an event. Heresy would have 20. Age of Sigmar would have 20. That was the kind of the vibe of it. Maybe those ratios are slightly off, but my point is they were sort of like, apples for apples in that regard. And I think there's a thing. As an AOS player, I want a healthy, community of players who are playing the current rule set the way that it currently is. And the reason I want that is because I want the opportunity to play and meet new people, get more games in, be able to just kind of enjoy this game system that I like and be able to essentially have that compatibility. Because I know the kind of contrarian individuals who will stand on their soapbox and tell you, well, you can just use this stuff at home. You can continue playing old rules. You can do all this sort of stuff. It's yeah, you can, but that isn't what I want. And that isn't what I want for AOS, and it's not what I want for Horus Heresy. I want to be able to go and pick up a game with someone and be able to play it and not have to have some exercise in frustration where I'm explaining to this individual, oh, you're playing version I'm actually playing Is it all right if I use this and this? And there's all these compatibility issues. That's not a fun experience. What's great about keeping on top of an edition and keeping, to the current standard is because that standard enables you to play games with strangers, which is a wonderful thing and one of the real joys of this hobby. And I understand when you're an insular kind of individual who only plays with a certain set of mates on the regular and it's all you ever want and all you're interested in, that's great for you. And ultimately you can continue to play Rogue Trader to your heart's content. Right? No one's saying that isn't an issue, because if that's your hobby, good on you. What I'm telling you is I think that most people, and again, obviously, this is one of those vibe attracts tribe situation. Most of the people I know are like me, because obviously, I guess we're all out there playing the current editions of games together. But the fact is that's what I like. I like that stuff. And that's what I would want for AOS. I want AOS to grow. I want it to be a vibrant, fun community of players who love the game for what it is today. I don't want to have to, add barriers or create situations. And I think this is the risk now with Heresy, because I think realistically, what we're going to see now is we're going to see people breaking away from this game, either just out of a sense of frustration or sort of obstinance or whatever. They're just going to basically be like, screw it, I'm going to keep playing the game the way it's been for the last little while. I'm just going to keep playing Second Ed. I don't care about any of this new stuff. And there's probably going to be a lot of people that will go in that direction. And Blood Bowl's a bit like that as well. I don't know if you've noticed that in the Blood Bowl community. Blood Bowl's got a bit of a weird, or has had an issue of the old guard just wanting to play the old game, and then the new ones being like, oh, we got this new edition with some slightly different rules. And they're like, don't go near it. I only want to play the version that was printed in 1998.
Well, yes, that had the living rules. Yeah, because I went to a tournament years ago where I think it was 2016 or 2014, I would say, version had come out, which was basically the old edition. They didn't really change anything in that one. But a bunch of people were playing with the old boards, because they were the boards for the pitch that they had before. They didn't buy the new one because they didn't need to. They played with the old team because they didn't need to, and the rules were the same, basically. So there will be people like that in Heresy. I think, actually, I've seen a lot of talk online about a similar split with the old world, with some people not liking the new sort of FAQ patch that they did recently. I don't know if it's a 1.5, but it's a new set of rules drops, and they made some very sweeping changes with some like the fundamental core rules and universal special rules and stuff like that. And I've seen a lot of discourse online saying, you know, splitting the community isn't good, but some people, especially community-minded people, want to sort of patch it and do community notes and updates to it. Because the actual Games Workshop ones maybe just aren't quite doing it for them in the direction that they want to do. And I think Old World's always had a bit of an interesting sort of split, because it sort of tried to give you a very sort of retro game. So I believe that it gives you more of a 6th ed version of Warhammer Fantasy, as opposed to the last edition, which was 8th ed. So a lot of 8th ed players would have preferred a lot of the kind of more interesting rules. Things like Step Up was one I've seen talked about loads, that was in that game that then wasn't in the Old World, because Old World wanted to harken back to a more classic era of fantasy. But if that wasn't your edition of the game, you're not going to find it particularly appealing in quite the same way. So I think, yeah, all of these games are going to have these sorts of issues. I think with 40k and Age of Sigmar, people just get on board with the new edition because, as you say, that's what the majority of people are playing. People are excited about the new edition because ultimately they have been so far giving us rules for free to an extent for your army or for the core rules. And that sort of incentivizes everyone to shift over to a new edition. I don't think many people in 10th ed, even though people will probably say, I prefer 9th ed, no one's really shouting about it, saying, well, I'm not playing 10th at all. I'm just going to stick with 9th, because if they go to a gaming club or their friends, most people just want to play the new edition.
Yeah, 100% that. I think, yeah, in those instances, and that's good for the overall health of the community there, but I agree with you as well. I definitely have seen with the fantasy gamers, there has been a real desire to continue playing 8th edition fantasy with the various rules and additives that have been contributed by the community over the years. So there is a desire from those players to keep kind of embracing that, because you're right, like, they've not been thrilled about it. But I don't think that's good, and I don't think it was necessary for Heresy. I think this is the thing. I think ultimately, I do feel like Games Workshop have really dropped the ball with this particular release personally. I think ultimately, not every one of your games needs a 3-year support cycle. I honestly, as well, by the way, I don't think they need to do another edition of Age of Sigmar for the foreseeable. I think Age of Sigmar is in a situation where, because of what they did with the 4th edition rule set, that they can just continue to release GHBs. Because General's handbooks feel like new editions. Yeah. So it's like, you don't need to do more.
We talked about this before. It was interesting because I was looking at the app yesterday and I was like, oh, where are the GHB rules? They're under like core rules, and then under there's like GHB 2324, which was the first one that came out last year. And then GHB 2425, which is the new one that came out this year.
You're off by a year, but...
Oh, is it 2526?
25, 26,
it is. I was preemptively thinking they backdated it rather than forward dating it. Anyway, but what was interesting is like, they could just keep adding new ones on, and that's sort of fine. And I do think those editions are so iterative with their annual updates that they don't need edition changes. I'm like, if you want to do a new launch box, and if there's if you just take the current edition of the rules and put them in print, which basically what everyone is already playing, that is totally fine. Like, literally the GHB has that in it already. It's the core rules with the updates and erratas and FAQs and stuff like that already. So I would much rather see that. That was sort of what I felt like was promised with 40k in 8th edition, but never really materialized. Whereas I generally feel like, especially with AOS, they could just keep going at it for a couple more years, like maybe do a 5-year cycle, and that would work. Because especially with AOS as being this, in air quotes, modular rule system, if they need to fundamentally update parts of the rules, they can technically do it via the General's Handbook, and that's kind of cool, even if it would make fundamental changes to the game, because it's meant to be modular. But I don't think it necessarily needs it, really. And
well, that's it. I agree with you. I think ultimately, if they just did if they just came along and went, "Oh, here's the new box set," and that's basically all you need. Like, because that is all you need. You don't need to do a new edition of AOS for the way it is. And I hope they don't. I think that would actually be to AOS's benefit, because if Age of Sigmar was just allowed to be the game it is with iterative updates via GHBs for 10 more years, I actually think they would build a better, kind of more consistent player base, because I think people would just like it for what it is. And, like, I think that's the thing, like, 40k, I don't know, I just think, like, I was listening to Rob, the Honest Wargamer, the other day talking about this, and he made a really interesting sweeping statement, which is 40k players aren't wargamers. They're basically like Pokemon card collectors or Labubu collectors, in so much as they're just in a fad. They don't really play war games. They don't really care about any of this stuff. They're just like Warhammer 40,000 for the memes, is what he was basically saying. Now, I don't necessarily 100% agree with that statement verbatim, but it was an interesting proposition, I suppose, in the idea that, you know, Warhammer 40,000 players aren't war gamers in the traditional sense. And I think maybe there's some truth to that statement, although I worry that by, you know, agreeing with that statement, I'm putting myself on a pedestal and being all kind of self-aggrandizing, which isn't something I'm really keen on doing. But yeah,
I think it's fair to say that 40k and AOS have shifted quite a lot how war games were played to how they are now. We talked about it when stratagems were introduced, and we were like, oh, it feels more like a card game now. And it's like that, those elements still exist, and it doesn't have the sort of crunchy depth that older editions of 40k had. So it is true to an extent, but we're all frothing at the mouth just buying new units because it's LOL's memes. I don't think that's quite true. It has got maybe more of a less casual. It's sort of like a more casual sort of mindset, but, and I mean this from a sort of hobby wargamer perspective. We're being spoon-fed from Games Workshop. We don't like write our own rules anymore or make our own missions, or very few people do, I would say, in comparison to the perceived amount that 40k gamers did in the past. I think there's an element to that. Everything's much more prescribed. You know, objectives are all circles that you stand on you know, play mats now. They're not cool, interesting objects that you used to have to measure to huddle your men around. There's a lot more kind of gamification of the game, to the point where you could actually say, for a lot of people, well, why aren't we just playing this on a computer? And that's, interestingly, the joy of Blood Bowl. Playing Blood Bowl on the desk, or on the tabletop, is actually quite difficult, because there's so many things to possibly think about. Whereas all of those calculations and, you know, your placements, your percentage dice rolls are all done for you when you play the computer game version. So it makes it much more of a breeze to play. But you do lose out on this sort of tactile nature of doing things yourself.
Except it always seems like the computer's cheating. That's the bit that...
oh, yes, you always roll double ones or, you know, scroll downs and stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's
it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to matter how well you would do when you're rolling dice. Whenever you want to go for it in the video game of Blood Bowl, you do consistently seem to botch it, unfortunately. But such is life.
Yeah, that's just the way of things sometimes, unfortunately. But yeah, no, it's an interesting concept. I think, as you said, I think for Heresy, I think what I would personally love, I think one thing Games Workshop should do is probably, I assume the Legacy's PDF is complete. There may be sort of things needed to add to it. I honestly think Games Workshop need to come out and say when the next edition of this games are going to come out. if it's in 3 years' time, they should tell people that so people can be aware of it and brace themselves for it and buy into this edition knowing that's the case. I would personally, if they go, actually, do you know what? We understand what our customer is. This is going to be on a 5-year cycle or a indefinite cycle, and we're just going to release. Personally, if they genuinely think this is the best edition ever, they should sort of stick to their guns and be like, "Cool, we have no plans to change this game. We are just going to release campaign books for this indefinitely until we feel like there's too much bloat or we fundamentally, there's a cultural shift in the player base that we need to change the game for whatever reason." I would much rather they came out and said something like that, because then
they're never going to, though, are they?
I mean, no. But I would like it if they did. I think I would be more encouraged to buy into this edition if they said it was going to last longer than 3 years, because if it's not, I'm not going to buy this game. I may eventually buy the book, but that is because I'm literally planning to play the game like that week. It's like, cool, I've arranged to have a game with someone, I'm going to buy the book and I'm going to play the game. Until that day comes, I'm not going to buy the book. Whereas historically, I would probably have picked up the book because I enjoy reading rules.
I think had it been that they had they just done an iterative thing. I mean, again, I don't know how they'd necessarily manage that with the Libras and all that kind of stuff, but I assume they could have just kind of left them as they were and then just done some seasonal updates where it's like, oh, you can, there's now a new version of the Libras for the new stuff in it, and then we've tweaked the rules. Or if you have the old ones, here's a supplement that you can buy that basically, or we're just going to do the legacy PDF that fills the blanks or gives you access to the new things. Whatever. Well, that wouldn't be a legacy PDF if it was new stuff. But my point is that there were ways they could have done it. But it's interesting as well in terms of thinking about what that means for the next edition of Warhammer 40,000 specifically as well, because obviously, is there a possibility that they will be indexing Warhammer 40,000 again? Before, I would have said that they would never have been so bold as to release a game system and then subsequently index it in the next edition. But obviously, this release has essentially shown us they don't care and they'll do that happily. Maybe this release, if they were going to do that, will teach them some lessons and they won't do it as a result. But I doubt that. I think I keep thinking that 40k 11th edition is likely to be an index edition just because I think Games Workshop like the way that it monetizes. And I think they like the way that they sell everyone indexes and then carry it on. Sorry, please.
Yeah, no. I can see that happening because I think, the concepts of selling everyone indexes, in a way, an index keeps people happy because it's a way of resetting everything. But then they go, cool, you get some rules for free to start off with, which keeps everyone happy. You basically buy index cards and then you buy those cards again, probably when the Codex or Battle Tome comes out. I want to say it was Glass Half Dead on YouTube. It was quite a while ago. A YouTube commenter, I think it was him, had said something like they suspect it's on a 2-edition cycle. So the first edition is an index. The one after is iterative, and then it's an index again. Because I think with AOS 2 to 3 was, I can't actually remember.
No, it was AOS 1, 2, and 3 were iterative. We've only indexed AOS. Well, I say Games Workshop have only indexed AOS in it again in AOS 4.
Yes, yeah, and so potentially the next one would be iterative, and then the one after that would be an index. And with 40k, the pattern has been a bit more recognisable in 40k. So 8th ed was index, 9th ed was iterative, 10th ed index. 11th
but that
could be, if you're following a pattern, iterative, which sort of gives people a bit of breathing room with their codex, and there's not huge churns and changes. I personally think there was the fundamental changes to the game aren't that great for 40k in terms of the rules that they came up with, yes, there's some universal special rules, but there's not really enough to make a meaningful differences between armies and units, and that to fix 40k, you have to index it this edition, I think. Though the irony was Ninth wasn't that bad, and the issue with Ninth, weirdly, the issue with Ninth was the codexes, and it's like you could have just rolled those out over time, but maybe it was like the power creep of Ninth felt too much, and the complexity in the codexes felt a bit much for certain books. That was the issue. Have you
gone back and read any of the 9th edition books again, just as an exercise in frustration, I suppose?
No, but I can already see the tables of updates that you can pick for your characters and stuff like that, or the Katars that you have to pick for your custodies that you have to do in a certain sequential order, which stuff like that was, that's just too complicated.
My mate Sam was around and we played 40k on Friday night, and he'd only gotten into 40k during 10th edition. So he started playing it like a couple of years ago, 10th edition time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asking about 9th edition as a rule set. And I said the same thing, the codex was a problem. And quite by random, I picked a book off the shelf from 9th edition, and it was the Tyrannid Codex, Phil. My God, what a disaster that rule set was. Oh my God, like literally the diagrams of this links to this, does this. It was like, I was literally like, oh my God, I've completely forgotten how crazy this edition was. I literally going back, and then I started looking at other ones, and I was like, wow. You know, like I looked at like the Chaos Knight one with the weird dial system where it's like, I'm especially angry. Now I'm less angry. Now I'm really angry.
Yeah, it was like Chaos Knights have the pendulum that swings in different directions.
Yeah. It was just like, what in madness, absolute madness.
This is the thing, I actually thought the core rules were fundamentally pretty sound.
Yeah, I agree. 9th edition had a really, really, really good base rule set. It just had really bad books. It was the 7th edition 40k problem all over again, where actually 7th edition for Warhammer 40,000 was good, evidenced by the release of Horus Heresy. Horus Heresy was a really, really good adaptation or supplement that made the 40k 7th edition rules really good. And that was great. And then, you know, they basically did 8th edition and the rest is history. But yeah, 7th edition was a good rule set with bad codexes. That was the exact same problem 9th edition had. Other than the Demon book, I stand by that book. That is a beautiful book. All hail the Demon Codex of 9th edition. Likely the last Chaos Demon book we'll ever get. For 40k anyway.
Quite possibly,
yeah. But anyway, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, ultimately, this edition churn, this thing they're doing, again, the most prevalent and most consistent example that people often give is they talk about, like, the current state of Magic the Gathering, and they basically say, if you look at Magic the Gathering, if you've gone away from Magic the Gathering for 10 years now, if you haven't picked up a deck and played Magic the Gathering since 2010, you can turn up with that deck of cards to a Friday night Magic session. Admittedly, they're probably playing Commander or Draft or doing something that isn't compatible with your old school standard, card set. But nonetheless, you can still turn up and say, hey, does someone want to play Magic the Gathering with me using the standard format? And they'll probably go, yeah, all right. And you can play it. Yeah, and it makes sense.
The rules are fundamentally the same.
Yeah, you'll probably get destroyed because of the new tempos and the new builds and the new combos and the new things, right? But the reality is you're not going to be completely out of your depth, because what they'll do is they'll go, oh, I'm playing this and he's doing this. And you go, oh, what is that mechanic? Oh, it means that when they come into play, I get to do this. Okay, cool, that makes sense. Because the fundamental foundations remain the same.
Yeah, and I feel like 40k up until 8th edition pretty much was doing that. Like, if you had played 3rd or 4th edition, you could, and got into it in 7th edition, so much of it would have felt familiar. And then 8th edition came along, threw that all out the window, and it felt like a breath of fresh air at the time. But it's like, that's a one and done thing. You can't keep doing that every 3 years. It's just madness. And it feels like they just haven't ever really stuck the rules properly, that they are constantly throwing things at the walls to make it work. And then it feels like with 10th edition, they're sort of getting there. They're sort of building on 9th, which sort of built on 8th, even though they have indexed them because they have changed also lots of different stuff. Yeah, but it feels like they just need to sort of sit with some rules for a while, get it right, first of all, and not rush them, which is often, I think, the problem. And then just sit with them for a while and make these small little changes here and there rather than these big sweeping changes. Yeah, I sort of hope with Heresy it sticks around a bit longer. It feels like it could be a much better edition from a rules point of view, potentially. But whether it is, I don't know.
Who knows? I think if we're going to wrap a bow on this Heresy conversation, I think my summary of the scenario would be, I think, and we didn't actually even talk about, the last thing we should probably talk about is the sales, because there's been a lot of rumors going around the internet talking about the fact that it hasn't sold. People are looking at like Wayland Games and some other previously relatively obscure, to me anyway, online retailer that does an exact inventory listing. So people are going, oh, they've still got 300 copies. And Mikey from Houston Wargaming apparently did a video where he managed through a process of elimination to work out that Wayland Game have like 900 copies on hand or whatever. And then there's been another thing where people are talking about the fact that they're doing recalls now because the stock is actually damaged because of the way they've packaged it. Lots of the actual content is being damaged. So there's rumors that people like Wayland, for example, have been able to have their stock recalled because they reported a multitude of it faulty. But again, I can't substantiate any of these rumors. Like, I have no insider insights on any of that stuff. Although I will say that typically, if you're a big enough retailer and you buy a lot of stock off a supplier, typically that supplier will do things to look after you, and they will put in these things called SOAs, so sale out allowances. That's quite a common practice in retail trade negotiations. So when you're selling stock into a retailer, you'll agree an SOA, which essentially funds discounting. So when you go into like a Tesco's and you see that cheese is £2 this week rather than £4, it's because the manufacturer of that cheese has done a deal with Tesco's via an SOA to basically help, nurture the sell through and drive up those kind of numbers by supporting Tesco's. And the logic is, as you sell more units, it eats into your margin, but essentially the additional sales, and then also the fact that you'll get, brand loyalty, all this stuff developed. That's the whole kind of logic behind it. Does Games Workshop do SOAs? I doubt it. They should, but they probably don't. Does Games Workshop do, sale or return? Probably not. You're probably just buying the stock off of them, and then whether you sell it or not is your problem. But I would imagine that for a company like Wayland or Element, they probably have some leverage. So maybe it's been this faulty thing, or maybe it's been a result of them just pushing back on GW and saying, you have to take this back because you want me to buy another 1,000 copies of Black Templars. I'm sitting on 1,000 copies of Saturnine. My cash flow isn't working anymore because you mucked this up. Do you want me to take 1,000 copies of Black Templars? Cool. Take back Saturnine. I imagine that would be the kind of things that could have happened. But again, that's pure speculation.
Yeah, I think things that we definitely know, places like Wayland and a few others started to offer 35% discount on their Saturnine boxes, which would, was normally quite unheard of. Normally they do 15-20% maybe.
Yeah.
This is more specific for the UK because it sounds like other countries like America, I don't believe they do discounts. Like they get given a price and that's what they have to sell it at, whereas in the UK, retailers get to sell it out whatever price they want to, even if it's lower than the RRP, which is recommended retail price. So
there is some weird EU regulations around sales promotions now, but obviously the UK doesn't have to contend with those. But there could be some other nuances.
And so I didn't watch Mikey's video, but I saw, I think Morgan Glory, I want to say his name is, he did a sort of wrap up video where he talked about it. And so he talked about Mikey's example, and basically you could tell on Wayland and other websites how much stock they had available. And now, as an update, you can't see it anymore. So it's either, because I think it's saying it's just available for pre-order or back order. So it's either because they've gotten rid of their stock, or they've updated their systems to no longer show how much stock they have available. And as you said, we don't know what situation they're in, whether they've managed to return some or just hide how much stock they have available. Who knows? But, it's interesting to note that, Scaven Tide didn't get discounted like this, although Games Workshop did just give away copies to people at events, specifically in non-UK countries.
Well, in the UK as well, like tournament organisers got sent free copies of it.
Oh, right, okay. So it did happen. It's interesting that Scaven Tide, I mean, maybe Games Workshop will be doing a similar thing themselves if they're sat on a bunch of stock, but it does feel like every edition that isn't 40k has this problem. 40k tends to always sort of sell out or be in a lot more hot demand, whereas Dominion had that problem where which was AOS 3rd edition, was on shelves for ages. Skaven Tide, even though it was a great game, just doesn't seem to have sold as well. I think the last edition of Heresy did sell well because it felt like a great value proposition in the box. They were really good units. You got a Land Raider, you got a Contemptor, you got Terminators, you got sort of good generic stuff, and all the models looked cool. Whereas this box is Saturnine, which is very Marmitey, Mark II armor, which is just generic.
I don't like Mark II armor at all, to be fair.
Personally,
I genuinely don't like it.
I don't like it either, even though I think in artwork it looks cool, and different colour palettes do lend themselves better. So, even Saturnine is painted up as an Iron Warrior or something, probably looks better than as a Salamander, for example. I think the problem with the Mark II is you've already had a few editions of people buying plastic Horus Heresy infantry models. Do you need another 20, 30, 40 infantry models in a different armor mark? Possibly not. And again, that's a problem maybe Games Workshop created because when they introduced, the Mark VI, they specifically went out of their way to say, this is available for all legions. So everyone was like, cool, I'll do, the Sons of Horus with Mark VI armor. So now Mark II's out, which, maybe was more historically accurate for Sons of Horus. They're like, cool, but I've already got enough as Mark VI now. Whereas before you might have held out. Who knows? I think there was one other issue. Oh yeah, the other issue that they've done with Heresy is that it feels like this week they're already selling the contents of Saturnine as individual boxes, and that feels like a very short space of time between the actual launch box and getting them broken down. Now, it does give Games Workshop a sort of selling potential because they can say, look how much this stuff is worth in our fictional currency of how we price stuff. It's like, cool, you can get
fictional currency of real money.
You can get £250 worth of stuff that we sell it at this price for 120 or however much it's being sold for. But in a way, it makes the Saturnine box feel less special because you can now buy all the bits of it individually. So if you only wanted a Saturnine Dreadnought, if you only wanted the Mark IIs, you can be like, okay, cool, I'll just buy that now. I won't buy the big box, which is both good and bad for customers because it's sort of value proposition. And you're not being upsold into a big box, but at the same time, it makes people who bought that big box feel like they don't have anything particularly special because everyone can get hold of it.
Well, that's it, right? And I think, that was definitely an odd decision. But yeah, again, as a pretty casual Horus Heresy collector, I say casual, I've got a lot of Horus Heresy stuff, but I've sort of by accident accrued probably 70 powered armored Space Marines for Horus Heresy. At least 70. Like, literally, and I look at the Mark II and I'm like, why would I buy this? I've already got, like, between the was it Mark 6 or Mark 5? The Corvus armor was Mark 5, wasn't it?
No, it was Mark 6. Mark 5 is the Mishmash armor.
Oh, Mishmash armor, okay, fine. Anyway, yeah, so I've got Mark 3 iron armor. I've got probably 30 of them, and then I've got 40 or so Mark 6, and it's like, I don't really need any more. Like, why would I buy more Mark II? It's like, literally, like, it's the same stuff. It doesn't make any sense. And that weapon turret thing, I'm like, oh, God, no. Like, why would, no one wants that, surely. I mean, maybe if you're keen on building cool terrain, but, like, no one wants that thing. It's so underwhelming.
I'm surprised it's not in a Iron Hands Start Collecting box. Sorry, Combat Patrol box for 40k.
Well, that's it. I mean, how much are they shifting this stuff for then in there? I mean, it's quite funny that you called it fictional prices when it's on. So you can get 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can get 20 Mark II tacticals for 52.50 in British pounds. 4 Saturnine Terminators, a squad of 4, 47.50, so 50 quid. The character, 31.50. My goodness, these prices. Good Lord.
I mean,
so,
£31 for a single character. I mean, to be fair, he is the size of, was it the old Boxnaut Dreadnought?
He's humongous.
He is very big, so I sort of understand why he's so expensive. And he's also multi-pose, multi-part kit. Yeah.
So you're right, though, because this becomes the interesting logic, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden you're looking at it going, oh, the Dreadnought is basically 70 quid. The Mark II unit is basically 50 quid. So at this point, it's like, well, for the price of half the tactical Marines and 1 Dreadnought, I basically can buy an entire box set right now from one of the discounted places. Because if they're selling them for like 120 quid or whatever it is, it's like, well, that's the equivalent price of 20 powered armored tactical Space Marines and one of the Saturnine Dreadnoughts. So it sort of becomes one of those things where you can start to convince yourself. It's like, well, if I hold on to it for like 6 months, I could probably sell all the bits I don't want on eBay for a small profit.
Probably,
because all I want is the Saturnine Dreadnought and to turn into a Grey Knight. Dread Knight. Yeah,
carriage. Yeah, Dread Knight. Yeah, I thought that was a cool conversion. To be fair.
Oh, that was typical. Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? That's what you're going to do. It's like you're going to look at it and go, cool, I'm going to now take this and what can I make 40k out of this stuff? And then how much of it can I shift in the future? And maybe that's the sort of mental gymnastics they're hoping we'll do in order to sell through the stock.
Maybe. Oh, and do you want to know the other odd thing? I don't know how much it was priced at, but the old Warhammer 40k drop pod, having recently been removed and replaced, has come back in Heresy form. Costs £34. Like, surely it wasn't that much before. I feel like they've just upped it by a tenner. I mean, I don't know how much it was available before, but it didn't feel like it would be that much.
I mean, the thing that doesn't make any sense about bringing back that particular kit is if I remember correctly, I mean, first of all, it's quite clearly got the old, I mean, in the Iron Warrior colour scheme they've painted it in, they've got the Aquila on it, which is wonderful. It's like, okay, well done, lads. Good work there. It's got
the loyalist Iron Warriors. They do exist.
Oh, okay, fair. And then also, in addition to that, inside the box set, if I remember correctly, I think you get decals, like you get like little plastic things for Black Templars and I think actually Black Templars are the only, but then I suppose you could just say, but they're Imperial Fist Templars. It's fine. There's like, anyway, again, it's a bit finicky, but it's crazy, isn't it? That we're in a world where GW has genuinely released a new drop pod kit for 40k and then just brought back the old one for Heresy. It's like,
well, it's the classic like AOSification and of, you know, old world and AOS. Like they've split them out to sell them for different systems specifically. I'm genuinely surprised they didn't redesign it with upgrade options available, because they used to have the Deathstorm and Deathstrike missile pods, which are available in the game. And that they just didn't combine it with this as a plastic kit with a plastic upgrade sprue. Or, you know, maybe it still is, because the old one was this plastic drop pod with resin upgrade pieces. Or maybe make it somehow compatible, so you could have built this or a Dreadnought drop pod, although those are bigger. So yeah, I'm not too surprised they didn't do that. But yeah, it's odd that it's just a re-release and not a new bespoke kit, because everything else is new bespoke kits.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation overall. But there we go. Yeah. Long story short is, I understand why the Heresy players are upset. I understand why they feel a little bit betrayed and why they are choosing not to embrace this new edition of Horus Heresy. I think Games Workshop have massively mismanaged it, and I think ultimately they should have known better. I think even the most kind of rudimentary research into your player base and community would educate you on what was required, and I don't think you can. And I think it's important to remember that GW definitely shouldn't just assume that everything works like 40k. Not every single system they have, not every single rule set, not every single world and setting can be treated with the same level of the same approach, right? So I think hopefully they've taken some learnings from that. I really hope they have. Is this the death knell in the Horus Heresy game system? I don't think so. I think it will probably recover, but I think it's going to take baby steps. I think Games Workshop now need to accept the fact that they've probably lost the established, existing player base or large quantities of them. And now they need to try and nurture the people who are willing to stick around, as well as obviously bring in new players. I'm not sure how they'll do it, because I think most people who are drawn into Games Workshop stores are still obviously massively attracted to Warhammer 40,000, Primaris Marines and all of that stuff. But you never know. It could be that, over time Heresy finds its particular niche, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's coming from a place of strength like it was when they did second edition Heresy. And the last thing I'll say on the managers, because I don't think we necessarily wrapped enough of a bow around it when we were talking about it, the stuff that people were saying and directing towards Pardo was pretty deplorable. Yes, I'm very passionate about this. Phil's very passionate about this. For God's sakes, don't take it to that level. It's utterly absurd. But yes, that was that.
I just wanted to say, I completely agree. And also, Pardo's an MMA fighter, so if you bump into him in the streets, he can take you on. So obviously, don't say mean things about him.
But as a true martial artist, he'll just he'll exercise restraint. Though that's the thing,
Well,
his hands will be registered as deadly weapons at this point. It's not in his interest to throw down with you in the streets. But yeah. But obviously, check out his stuff, and ultimately, a bit of a weird element, but it is important because, again, as I say, I'm not personally acquainted with Pardo, but I know Phil is, and again, my opinion of him has always been that he seems like a really nice guy who genuinely is doing his best to try and entertain and create good content around a game system that he's genuinely passionate about. And again, as someone who was obviously taking it upon himself to put content out there in the world, pretty much free of charge, except for our glorious patrons. It just seems insane to me that someone's life could be impacted in that way by, what is supposed to be a fun and passionate thing. But anyway, there we go. Pardo stuff notwithstanding, Heresy, interesting, strange set of circumstances, hopeful that it gets better, but completely understand why people aren't thrilled at the moment. And I think Games Workshop do deserve to be punished for bad decisions. I do think we should stand by our commitment to not buying or not supporting this particular system if we don't like it. That's also the thing that I would also say. Vote with your wallets, people. And yeah, be nice to each other. That's my closing statement on heresy. What do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah, I completely agree. So I won't add any more.
Fabulous, lovely stuff. We were going to try and talk about Space Wolves, but I don't think we're going to do it now. What's great is that this weekend we're seeing the release of Grey Knights and Black Templars. So both of those books are coming out on this Saturday. So basically we'll do a bumper Marine supplement edition.
Marine extravaganza.
Absolutely. Who knows? We might end up with another King of the Characters style tournament where we pit all the different chapter masters against each other or what have you. There you go. We'll see if we can cram that into one episode, although in all likelihood it will have to come sequentially. But yeah, next week we'll talk about Grey Knights, we'll talk about Black Templars, and we'll talk about Space Wolves. And yeah, but before we do any of that, we have, of course, a 5-star review. Oh, hang on. That's not how I do it anymore. Transitional noise. There we go. I know how it works. This week's 5-star review has come via Apple Podcasts of Great Britain. Working my way through the Great Britons. We do well, Phil, in the Britons. And it is via Snickrot, no less. Or Snickrote? Snickrooty? Snikrote. How would you pronounce that, Phil?
Snickrot?
Yeah,
Snickrot.
Snickrot.
Maybe it's French.
I mean,
Snickrot.
There you go. I've never actually thought to check what, if any reviews exist in the French Apple Podcasts section. I'll do that next time, see if there are any. Probably not. We probably don't do so well in the Frances. But yeah, anyway, yes. So this lovely individual has left us a 5-star review. We already did this bit in the intro when we say, hey, why not give us a 5-star review? But again, saying it again, why don't you give us a 5-star review? Because you could be here in the 5-star review segment hearing about yourself over the internet, much like Snick wrote. Who has been kind enough to do so. So, hey, come on, do us a favour, give us a 5-star review. If you've listened this far into the podcast, you must enjoy or really hate what we do. So, on the assumption it's the former rather than the latter, hey, why not give us a 5-star? Yeah, anything you want to add, Phil, or should I just get on with reading it and wrapping up episode 213?
Go, governors, give us a 5-star review, please. I need it. I haven't had a 5-star to eat for breakfast or lunch.
That's it. It's a hard time for poor old Phil. His poor little street urchin is having a horrible time. Spare a thought for urchin Phil. What was the other? Oh God, it was the Cockney Orc thing, wasn't it? That's a callback to a time for.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Anyway, well, I won't ask you to conjure it on this occasion, but yeah. Anyway, so next week. So Snick Rooty has said just 5-star review, 5 stars, which of course is a prerequisite. Thank you very much for 5-star review. Cheers all. Basically, it just reads, great show. Keep up the good job. Regards, Bart. There you go, an extra bit of name, Bart. Presumably not the, famous Bart, but in fact a, regular human being with the name Bart. I've still yet to this day actually met a Bart in real life, although I have heard rumours that they exist. I just haven't encountered one myself. You ever come across a Bart, Phil?
Not that I can think of. They'd probably be called Bartholomew, and Bart is like a nickname.
Quite possibly. But regardless of it,
there's probably a few Bartholomews in Oxford, so they're out there. That's for sure.
There you go. Go seek them out, Phil. Find yourself your very own Bart, much like the one we have here in the 5-star review. And yeah, thank you so much for the 5-star review, dear Bart. You're a lovely, wonderful human being. I would have thought that perhaps, had you been given the opportunity to create an online persona for yourself, you would have referenced the episode of The Simpsons where Bart refers to himself as young Rudiger. So, maybe that's something you can consider for future online handles or usernames. But yes, dear old Rudiger, or Bart, thank you very much for the 5-star review. You're a saint. And to elaborate on that, here is Phil.
Thank you very much, Bart /Snickrot. Thank you very much. Glad you're enjoying the show. We love you. dearly, and thank you for that nourishing 5-star snack. It will keep me going for another week until next time.
Until the next time, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you very much. I merely like you, Bart. If Phil wants to arrange some kind of romantic engagement with you, that is for him to do so. But, I think at this stage, I'm happy just to be friends. But it's great to hear that Phil is in love with you. So, there we go. Episode 213 in the bag. Anything else, Phil, or should we just go away? I've been learning the rules for War Cow. Not War Cow. That was a joke someone did. No, it's War Crow. That's what it is.
War Crow.
Sorry, I got the animals mixed up. But yeah, War Crow. It's good. It's fun. We should play some War Crow sometime.
Oh, that's good. I would happily do it. I think I watched an intro video and it sounded quite confusing, even though they were telling me it was simple. I've been reading, as a slight tangent, Chaos Dwarves, the original book, and Tumblecon, the Forge World specialist game book, and reading a little bit of its history online because it's quite fascinating, because it was potentially the alternate future of what they could have done with Warhammer Fantasy if they hadn't end timed it. So it is a great observation in what was to be, never was.
I'm actually, it's funny you bring up end times. I've been slow burning buying the end times books as well.
I think Darksphere in London might have a couple going cheap, but maybe just on eBay they're cheap enough. But they've got a nice little book section of like old stuff, and they had a couple of books of the first edition. What was it? The search for Galmagraz?
Oh yeah,
the Sigmar's hammer. The search for that, and a couple of the others, and those were really interesting. And I'd be quite tempted to buy those as interesting artifacts. But the End Time books look quite interesting as well.
Yeah, well, I've picked up a couple of them so far. So yeah, they're nice to have. I think the thing is basically I realised I was in a situation where I had almost 100% completed. Well, I had 100% completed 8th edition fantasy, except for all the End Time books. And I was like, I may as well just get them. Then I've got a complete thing. But yeah, they're not prohibitively expensive. I've seen some very good deals to get them all in a oneer, but that still feels like more than I want to spend. It's like, right. But yeah, I'm slow burning that. And again, interesting you bring up the Dunstan thing. I've actually, since you went to London last, Phil, and told me about Element Games in central London, I've been going there on the relative regular now, picking up stuff.
It's lovely.
It is lovely.
It's great discounts.
Yeah.
I picked up my, was it the Nexus Curse Sepulchre or Nexus of Grief? I got that from there, and they had to search behind the store door because it wasn't out on the shelf. And I asked them, and they were like, "Let me have a look," and then they gifted it to me. So yeah, they're great customer service, lovely people.
Yeah.
No,
I've
little store.
I've really enjoyed visiting them over the last few weeks. I think they've been great. I've been drip buying more Black Templars ready for the Black Templar release, and also working on my Skaven ready for the doubles. Me and Joe are going to go Chaos for the doubles. So yeah, I'm going to have Skaven, and he's going to bring in Slaves to Darkness. So yeah, we're going to hopefully do well. I was hoping he was going to say Death because I really wanted just to bring the Gash because I thought it would have been funny, but
that's true.
Unfortunately, now I'm going to have to paint more rats, which is fine because I really want to actually do that. So yeah. All right, mate. Well, look, there you go. That was episode 213 in the bag. Thank you so much, Bart, for your 5-star review. You're a saint. If you'd like to be like Bart, please do the same. Otherwise, that's the end of episode 213. Cheers very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Governor.